Carla, just in case, I'm going to go ahead and record.
Are you ready to start, Elaine?
Carla, let us know when we are Facebook Live. Okay, Bridget, I think we're ready. Are you still on?
I think we lost her.
Did we lose her?
Yes.
Okay, 1 second. She'll hop back on. Hello, everyone. We're going to begin shortly. We're just waiting on Bridget to hop on. There she is. Okay, Bridget, we're ready.
How about I unmute? Good afternoon. My name is Bridget Hines, and I serve as the co-chair for the Hispanic Leaders Network as a member of the Syntax Hispanic Chamber of Commerce Board. I also serve as the Director of Communications at First Methodist Waco. It is my great honor and pleasure to welcome you to this month's Hispanic Leaders Network virtual monthly luncheon presentation. Before we begin, we will take some time to celebrate the accomplishments of our HLN members. Please unmute yourself to share something good with the group. Well, I guess I'll get started. I'll start this off. So this month I accepted a position on the NCC Foundation Board.
And I am now a board member with the Syntax Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. I'm very excited about that. If anyone wants, go ahead, sorry.
I saw the judges in the chat or in the group, so I just wanted to just celebrate them and their new branding. The Syntax Hispanic Chamber of Commerce was able to participate in the ribbon cutting, and it was a lot of fun, and we're just so grateful for them and what they're doing in our community.
Thanks so much.
Jaja, can you share a little bit about the rebranding and the name?
Yeah, so I'm a co-owner of Waco Cha Boba Tea Company here in town. We rebranded to Cha Community just a week ago to better encapsulate our brand identity. And also, as we now are also expanding by the end of the year to Temple, Texas, in our second boba tea shop. So yeah, so we're really excited. We loved having everybody out for the ribbon cutting. It was such a fun time to celebrate because we haven't been able to gather in person for quite a while now. And so it was almost a year and a half after we've opened our shop, but we delayed because of the pandemic.
Congratulations, Jaja. That's wonderful. So everyone, this is something new that we're doing. So if you have had anything exciting happen, whether it's a promotion, change jobs, it's something that you want to share, even if it was in the last 2 to 3 months, because this is the first time that we decided to make this part of our program. We would love to hear what you are celebrating. So feel free to unmute and share.
Okay, so again, this is the first time that we've done this, but as we are developing this part of our program, the purpose is to celebrate each other, but also to allow other people in our group to see the progress that we're making, the reason that we're here, and that's to get, to have the influence that we want to have in our community. So next time, maybe we all won't be so shy, because I know there are some people in this group that have things to share, but maybe next time we'll get a few more of you to kind of step up and share that information. Okay, and so today, the Hispanic Leaders Network welcomes Josh Caballero, Director of Community Organizing at Grassroots Waco. And since this program is during the lunch hour, we will have Pastor Gabe Dominguez from First Methodist Waco lead us in a prayer.
All right, I think that's my cue right there, right? All right, well, let us pray. So, Father God, we just thank you for this time, this opportunity for our leaders to get together. We lift up those that are leading already, and we lift up those that are being developed and are our potential future leaders of our city. Lord, open up our eyes as we gather together to listen to Josh and to stack hands in our community to make a difference and represent leadership in a healthy way that leads with integrity. We ask for your blessings on this whole conversation. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Well, I have the pleasure of introducing our speaker today, one of my very dear friends. And if I was making a list of top wonderful people in Waco, he's definitely on it, and one of the tops of the list. I introduced Josh Caballero. He's a native of Florida, Texas, and a graduate of Wayland Baptist University with a degree in religious education. Moved to Waco to attend Truett Seminary, where he met his wife, and they have called Waco home for the past 16 years. Before joining Grassroots, Josh worked as a VASA Community Coalition Coordinator, working with school districts in the region to provide substance abuse prevention education to area students for 9 years. For the past 5 years, Josh has worked as the North Waco Community Organizer at Grassroots Community Development, where he works closely with residents, businesses, churches, and schools to develop thriving neighborhoods throughout Waco. Josh recently stepped into a new role with Grassroots as the Director of Community Organizing. Josh, that could have been your tell me something good right there, where he oversees a community organizing team and community partnerships. During his time in Waco, Josh has been active on several boards, including serving on the Heart of Texas MHMR Board of Trustees, Board of Directors for American Gateways in Austin. Josh also serves at local advisory boards at Methodist Children's Home, Family Outreach, Planned Parenthood, the Waco Foundation, and recently appointed to the City of Waco Redistricting Citizen Advisory Committee. In 2020, Josh was named one of the Greater Waco Chamber of Commerce 40 Under 40 honorees. He enjoys living in Waco and spending time with his wife of 15 years, Jennifer, and his 5-year-old daughter, Millie Grace. Again, this is my great friend, and we're so happy to have you here, Josh, to share with us about what leadership means to you.
Thanks, Herman. You know, Herman asked me to speak at something not that long ago, and I wrote that bio for that. And I always hate when it gets read. Those kind of things are a little awkward, but thanks for doing that and introducing me. Good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to be here with you. As has already been said, my name is Josh Caballero, and I'm the Director of Community Organizing at Grassroots Community Development. When I was first asked to speak today, I wasn't exactly sure what I should say. First of all, this is a little tricky because I can't see all of your faces, and I don't really like talking about myself much, if I'm honest, and it's a little difficult for me to even know what is special or worth sharing about my story. I'm not still certain that I know the answer to that, to be honest, but I'm going to do my best. The truth is, though, that I can't really tell you about myself without also telling you about the people around me who have shaped who I am today. There's an old proverb that says, "I am only because we are," and I think that especially rings true for me. I am only because of what the people around me have been, how they have formed my experiences, and what those experiences have done to shape me. I grew up in a small rural town in the panhandle of Texas, Floydada, Texas. If any of you have ever heard of that, it's near Lubbock, Texas. I was raised mostly by a single mom and my grandma. My dad was in and out of prison for most of my childhood, so he wasn't really around much. My mom grew up in the same small town where I grew up, and after graduating high school and working a handful of odd jobs, she became a teacher's assistant at our small elementary school in town. I watched her work hard to make ends meet for me and my younger sisters and to keep things together for our family. It wasn't always easy, but she always found a way to do that. I watched her hustle, work the system, and do any kind of job from cleaning houses to working out in the fields to be able to put food on the table for us. When my dad was around, he was often abusive, but my mom always did her best to keep us safe and always found a way to continue to move forward. I didn't always understand her positivity, if I'm honest, but I think she was just doing her best to protect us. She was and still is my biggest cheerleader in life. In her eyes, I can do no wrong. She always told me that I could do anything I wanted, even if she didn't always understand some of my aspirations. She taught me the value of faithful presence and perseverance and showed me what it meant to be courageous. My grandma, who grew up in South Texas, had my mom later in life. So when I was born, she was already in her mid-60s. She spent the majority of her life working multiple jobs and raising a family of 6 children as a single mom herself. Stop her from doing what she needed to do once she got older. My grandma taught herself basic math, the anchor in our family. She knew the meaning of sacrifice, but she never felt that any sacrifice was too great for her family. I'm not sure that my grandma ever said these words to me, but she certainly taught me to never think that I was above anyone, but to never let anyone treat me like I was beneath them. That was the way she lived her life. She was from humble beginnings, but she knew that she was just as capable of anything of success as anyone else. Beyond that, I learned my limited Spanish from my grandma, but more importantly, I learned the meaning of real hard work, the value of being curious and learning as much as possible. My childhood was shaped by these 2 women. They made sure I was at school every day, unless I was too sick for their home remedies. But in reality, there weren't too many things that Vicks Vapor Rub or honey and lemon tea or an egg across the body, which I don't still fully understand, or a good caldo couldn't cure. But not only did they make sure I was there, they ensured that I learned while I was at school. They found ways to ask me about my day and make sure that I knew that education was important. It was important to them. They also made sure that I was at church every Sunday morning and Wednesday night, and back in those days, Sunday evening as well. They made sure that I knew that church was important. It was important to them that I developed a faith that was personal and meaningful to me. They encouraged me to play outside and make friends and take an interest in art. They provided small spaces for me to just be a kid and escape the struggle and the violence and the trauma happening around me. And when it was time for me to start working to help support the family, they made sure that I understood the value of hard work and sacrifices required for family. But they also made sure that I balanced that work with the things that brought me joy, things like sports and art and friends. And I did my best to learn from them and heed their advice. I worked hard in school so that I could make good grades. But more importantly, I took a real interest in learning. And for those of you who know me well, you know that I still value education and love learning about new things. I place education almost above anything else. And that's something that I think they instilled in me. I read my Bible and I prayed, but I also visited every church in our small town that our small town had to offer, which weren't very many denominations, but I went to every single one. I asked difficult questions, and I developed a faith that would prove to be important in my life. I eventually learned how to get outside of my shy personality and make friends, and found an inner peace by escaping into drawing and painting when I needed that. And I learned how to balance work and school and all of the things that life often throws at us. I knew what it meant to earn money to help pay for groceries or formula for my baby sister, while also keeping up with my grades in school and playing every sport that my small town had to offer. And those lessons served me well. I ended up graduating from high school near the top of my class and being one of the first in my family to go to college and then grad school. It certainly wasn't easy. I had my share of missteps and bad choices and wrong turns, but somehow I managed to stay on track or get back on track. When I went to college, I had no idea how financial aid worked or how to apply for certain scholarships. And I know that I ended up taking out more student loans than I probably should have with my grades. I never fully felt like I belonged at my small private university, nor when I came here to Truett Seminary. I worked full-time almost the entire time I was in school, but I still managed to make excellent grades. It wasn't easy, but I knew that my success was going to require hard work and perseverance. And those things I knew about, thanks to my mom and my grandma. But I will also admit that I didn't do any of these things on my own. As I mentioned already, there were lots of lessons that I learned from my mom and my grandma that helped me move forward in my path. But I also had other people that helped push me along the way. People like my freshman basketball coach, who taught me so much more than just a jump shot, but really taught me about life and how I should live a life. He taught me about determination and the value of developing relationships. He knew every single one of his players off the court and took a real interest in us, in our stories, in our lives, and what was happening around us. I will never forget the way that he encouraged me to make good decisions that freshman year. I think of people like my high school calculus teacher, who always spent the first day of class telling us his hopes and dreams for us. He would spend the entire first day in every single one of his periods just talking about his hopes and dreams for all of his students. From him, I learned how to believe in myself and how to work towards a goal. I think of my older cousin, who was 10 years older than me, but had gone to college before, the first in our family to do so. And he took me under his wing to show me that I could do it too. He was only the second full-time youth pastor in the entire state of Texas at a Hispanic church. And when I was headed down a bad path, he's the one who stood in the gap for me and helped me turn it around. I think of people like my college religious education professor at Wayland, who taught me the difference between servant leadership and self-serving leadership. And I also think of my younger sisters, who have always looked to me more as a father figure than a big brother, because my dad wasn't always present and because of the large age gap between us. They looked up to me and pushed me to be the best version of myself and set a good example. They are still a big part of my motivation to live a life that's meaningful. And I honestly can't leave out the lessons that I learned from my dad as well. He's probably one of the funniest guys I know, and as smart and creative as they come on his best days. I learned the value of making good decisions and the cruel reality of a world that sometimes penalizes us for a lifetime for the smallest of mistakes. But I also learn and am learning still the real power of redemption, grace, and reconciliation. A life full of lessons from the people around me that I've carried with me. But as I look back, there's probably one moment from my life that has shaped me and the work I've chosen to do more than anything. I was a freshman in high school. My dad had been out of prison for several years, but he and my mom had not been having a good year, and that year they finally split up for good. Without his income, my mom was struggling to keep food on the table for me and my two younger sisters, the youngest of which was only 18 months old at the time. I was 14, and I'm still not exactly sure how this worked, but somehow I was able to get a job painting and cleaning up the local schools through a federal program at the time to help make ends meet. I didn't know what to do with the anger I felt towards my dad. So I started doing drugs, getting into fights, failing my classes for the first and only time in my life, and as a result, not being able to play sports. My grandma lived 2 houses down from us, and she helped when she could, but she was also having financial troubles at the time. And that year, she had her second heart attack right before Thanksgiving. That heart attack eventually brought on an Alzheimer's diagnosis, and my mom had to make the difficult decision to put her in a nursing home. This series of events in such a short amount of time became too much for my mom, and she began to fall into a deep spiral of depression. She missed work, would spend entire days crying in bed, stopped paying attention if she or any of us ate food or took a bath or even went to school. I was placed in a position when I suddenly had to make some big decisions about how I would respond and what I would do in that moment. Honestly, I had to grow up. I had to take on a different level of responsibility. So for a few weeks, I got myself and my sisters ready for school or daycare. I arranged rides to and after school. I walked to the grocery store across town to buy food and formula. I cooked our dinners, handled bedtime routines. I had seen my mom and grandma step up and do what was necessary to take care of the family for so many years, and now it was my turn. Get what happened that Christmas. Some of you have probably heard me tell this story. My mom was still in a state of depression, and we didn't put up a tree that year. We had grown accustomed to small Christmas gifts during lean years, and we knew that that year would be especially lean. I'm sure some people in town had to have learned of our circumstances, at least some of them, surrounding our family. And somehow we ended up on the angel tree list at a local First Baptist church. I'll never forget when a few people from the church showed up at the door, showing Christmas presents for me and my sisters. I went to get my mom from her bedroom, and she came out of her room, and she sat there in the living room watching while we opened gifts. If I'm honest, I remember feeling a little bit like a charity case. But I remember watching my sisters open up their presents with excitement. They were too young to notice at the time, but I remember looking back at my mom in that moment and seeing a look of complete humiliation and shame wash over her. We hadn't been asked to be on anyone's Christmas gift list, and we certainly didn't want to be on anyone's list. I've often reflected back on that moment, and I've thought about how small she must have felt watching complete strangers provide her kids with gifts that year because she couldn't. The people from the church that day had wonderful intentions. I'm sure they were just trying to do some good for what they saw, I'm sure, as a needy family. But they also caused deep pain and grief that day, and there was a lesson in that for me too. We never talked about it, but after that day, my mom slowly found a way to move forward again. She started taking care of herself, paying attention to what was going on with us, and getting back to work. She picked herself up and she continued to move forward. But that moment and the lessons from it have stayed with me all these years later, and I carry it with me in the work that I try to do today. I've learned that just like the people from that church in my small town, with good intentions, we often try to provide care without ever involving the very people we're trying to help, or asking if the help that we can give is actually wanted or what they need. As a community organizer, I believe that citizens should have an active voice in the decisions that impact them. People have a right to maintain their dignity regardless of their circumstance. People like my mom had a right to maintain her dignity, no matter what was going on. People deserve a seat at the table, and they deserve the opportunity to set their own tables. These are the things that I've learned from my experiences and from my story that I try to implement in my work today. But like I said at the very beginning, there's not really anything that unique or special about my story, if I'm really honest. In some ways, the threads woven in the fabric of my story are the same threads in all of our stories. Threads of family and sacrifice, relationships, adversity and perseverance, threads of hard work and creativity and education, threads of faith and continuing to move forward regardless of what life throws at us. These are the threads that I see in the stories of the people I get to work with all of the time here in Waco. Stories of hard work and perseverance, and the business owners that I work with on 25th Street, trying to make it against all odds, dreaming big dreams for their business and their community. Threads of family and sacrifice in the moms at Brook Avenue, or Alta Vista, or Indian Spring, or Carver Middle School, hoping against hope that their kids recognize the importance of education and are able to live out their dreams. Residents moving forward to find ways to have their voices heard and improve their neighborhoods in the process. Threads of creativity and building relationships and community partners all across our city working together to do good work to build a better Waco. I see community leaders stepping up to stand in the gap for our youth, the way that someone once did for me. And I could probably go in my childhood, from my mom and my grandma, and so many others. I am still learning today from people like all of you. And like I said at the beginning, I am only because we are. And so, with that said, I want to thank you for being a part of the collective we that continues to shape me. And thank you for giving me the brief opportunity to speak to you today and share a small part of my story and how that has shaped me and the work that I do today.
Josh, I want to thank you for sharing your story and how you worked so hard to persevere through various struggles and barriers that you had to overcome. You are truly an inspiration for so many, and thank you for emphasizing that we need to give thanks to the great people in our lives who helped shape us. You are definitely a great leader, and we celebrate you as a servant leader and a role model. for current and future leaders in our community. You have been one, and I know there's several that really show that it's important to work hard for the people we care about and the community we care about. So at this time, Josh, we have a few questions. So the first question is from Jaja. Where do you see Waco in the next 5 to 10 years?
It's a great question. I'm not sure if I can fully answer that, but what I will say is that I'm excited about the possibility of where Waco can be in the next 5 or 10 years. I know that there are great people, many on this call, who are doing really good work to think holistically about how we serve our community and how we do that in a way that preserves people's dignity, right? I know that there are ways that we are rethinking what development looks like in our city. We are thinking about how education and workforce come together and what that needs to look like. And so I'm really excited about a lot of the work going on right now that I know many of you are involved with and engaged with in a lot of different ways, and work that I'm not even certain about, to be quite honest. And I think that there are many community leaders who are paying attention to equity in very new and exciting ways. And I think there are projects going on all around our city that I think are going to prove to be fruitful. And so I'm excited. I don't really know if I can answer what that looks like in the next 5 or 10 years, to be quite honest. But I think that I've seen, at least over the past 5 years, that we've begun to move in a direction that's really exciting, and that is taking new things into consideration. And that is in no small part because of many leaders on this call and many other leaders doing really great work in our city. So I will say real quick, just as a kind of anecdotal thing that I'm really excited about in some of the work I'm doing specifically, is we are in the midst of working with and gathering input from business owners along 25th Street, because we know that I've been meeting with Mayor Meek and Councilwoman Palmer about conducting a city master plan and corridor study along in that area for several months now, and we know that that got approved in the latest city budget. And so we are beginning to gather input and information from business owners along that corridor so that they have a voice in that process from the very beginning. And that is work that excites me and work that I think is important, but work that that the city is behind as well, and that they are pushing and encouraging. And so I'm really excited about those kind of opportunities. So I think the next 5 or 10 years could be really great things in Waco. So yeah, thanks for the question, Jaja.
Yes, so exciting. Just where the city is going, and very appreciative that you're a part of the initiatives that are happening to make Waco just a better place for everyone, really. So hopefully you've also been able to look at some of the comments, Josh, whenever you have time, but there's some wonderful comments in the chat specifically for you and the group. They're very lovely, but we do have one more question. So what advice would you give to current and future leaders, especially when they're faced with adversity or setback? What would you say to them to inspire them to keep going and moving forward?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I get to, in my work with a lot of different residents who don't have positions or titles, but I just had a group last night at Alta Vista that me and my coworkers were leading with a group of parents at that elementary school. And one of the things that we mentioned to them is we gave them a definition of leadership. And the definition that we like to use is really simple and basic. And it's simply, leadership is taking action to move a group of people towards a common goal. It's a really simple, basic definition. But we asked him, why do you think we use this definition? And one of the moms responded and said, well, because I can relate to that. I get up every morning and act and move my kids to getting to school on time and accomplishing that every single day. And I think that's sometimes we need those small reminders that leadership can look a lot of different ways. And the truth is that all of us not only have the capacity, but exercise leadership every single day in our lives in small moments. And sometimes we just need to be reminded of that, and that needs to be highlighted. And so the advice I would give is, one, know that it doesn't matter what your circumstances are currently or from the past, or maybe in the future, that you are a leader and that you have the ability to make the choices now to be able to move forward in whatever that looks like for you. And so I would just encourage folks to begin to see themselves for the leaders that they are, and begin to tap into that, whatever that looks like, whether in small ways or big ways. You don't have to have the title or position or do that a certain way to be a leader. So.
That's perfect. Thank you so much, Josh. And I think there is another question. I'm going to see if I can try to, and this one's from Rosie Bautista Ramos. So Rosie says that she has been given her time as a volunteer to the community for more than a decade. She says that she is dreaming for a faith-based language and leadership academy. And she wants to know, what advice would you have if she wanted to pursue, or what resources would you recommend if she wanted to pursue a small business? She said that she wants to provide mentorship as an outsider. And sorry, I'm trying to get the rest of it, sorry. She wants to provide mentorship as an outsider. She is from Campeche, Mexico, a naturalized USA citizen. She says that she dreams of family engagement. So the purpose is to gather leaders to provide key resources to level up in the, sorry, I keep on losing my place. So the purpose is to gather leaders to provide key resources to level up in the transition into people's new life. She says she wants to be able to equip and motivate them, also to have a space and place and space for our race to offer a safe learning environment, embrace our linguistic identities. So I think she's asking, what resources would you recommend if she wanted to pursue a small business venture to further the cause?
I think utilizing some of the leaders on this call who have done some of that already, right? And tapping into the resource. I know HLN is a great network of community leaders. I will not pretend, I work with several business owners, but I will not pretend to be an expert in that area. So I would want to refer to several of the business leaders that I know in the community or that we even have on this call. I'm thinking of Jaja as an example, but so many others as well. And so that would be my first recommendation. I also think that Rosie and I might be talking later on today. And so so I'd be happy to kind of hear a little bit more and follow up with her then.
Yes, and there are several good resources in our community that really are good resources for anyone who wants to start a business. Jaja said Start Up Waco is a good resource to start with.
That's
they
great.
offer mentorship.
Yeah, that's right.
There are they're very supportive, and we gotta.
I do want to also point out one of the themes that I see going through her question is about the Language and Leadership Academy, because in our in our retreats where we've been figuring out what our priorities would be in both Hispanic Chamber and Hispanic Leaders Network, we have all had language justice at the forefront of our conversations. And so Rosie, I think, I know you're already teaching these classes, and your name has come up many times as a community leader in that area. Like, we look at you as the leader that we know. And so I think the conversation is much larger than this meeting. But Rosie, I want you to know that we're kind of leaning on you for your knowledge and expertise in this area, but you can lean on us as far as connections and how to get in contact with people for that language justice that we're all looking for.
I agree. Thank you, Bridget. So if I think that is all the questions that I can see. Josh, I want to thank you again. Before we close out, I do want to just make an announcement, and really just a reminder that one of the goals of the Hispanic Leaders Network is to have more Hispanic leaders serve on various boards and committees and be a service to our community. If you have a certain area of interest and you would like to have a seat at the decision-making table, we encourage you to become involved and commit to making a difference in our community. We have a survey that you can complete, and I believe Carla is putting that in the chat. But if you would fill out that survey, it's a very short survey. I believe no more than 5 questions, including your name and contact information. We want to connect you to an organization that you would be interested in serving. And I can tell you, just this week, we've had 3 organizations that have reached out to HLN and to the Syntax Hispanic Chamber looking for board members or committee members. So there is a need in Waco to diversify our boards and committees throughout the city. And it is important that we all have a seat at the table, whoever wants to be a servant, which I think we all should have some place for that. Lastly, please mark your calendar. The next Hispanic Leaders Monthly Luncheon will be on Friday, December the 3rd. It's going to be a really good meeting that our program planning committee has in line for you. And so I will give you a little hint. It's a panel of business leaders that will be led by Chris Gonzalez. So we definitely want you to be a part of that. Our plan is for that meeting to be in person, as long as the COVID numbers don't go up. So please stay tuned and be on the lookout for those announcements on social media, Facebook and Instagram. Lastly, again, just want to say muchísimas gracias to Josh Caballero. Thank you for joining us today. And to everyone, this concludes our meeting. Enjoy the rest of your Friday and have a great weekend. And until next time, adios.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank y'all.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you, Josh. You did a great job. Thank you so much. Very inspiring.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank
Thanks. Bye, y'all.
you. Bye.
Bye. Have a good afternoon.